Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Salwa Arshad and today I'll be reviewing 3 podcast shows on grammar. Before I begin, I'd like to tell you that I have never ever listened to any podcast till date, not even an entertainment podcast, let alone a grammar one. You should first know that why grammar learners should listen to podcasts. Podcasts are a great way to learn a new language or practice fluency in a language they already know. With a native speaker in your ear, you can study a language. Listening to podcasts improves fluency. Studies have revealed that listening improves fluency. It helps you speak better English. Earlier, our teachers used to recommend reading number of books and watching English television shows so that we can improve our fluency. But podcasts are a new way to improve our English fluency. Once you begin listening to it, you'll soon observe a change in your speaking attitude. Today, I'll be reviewing 3 podcasts, and they are rated as the 3 best podcast shows on Google. Let's see what are those. First podcast show is Grammar Girl Quick and Dirty Tips for Better Writing. Second podcast show is Go Natural English. And third podcast show is speakenglishpodcast.com. First, I'll be reviewing Grammar Girl Quick and Dirty Tips for Better Writing. The host, Mignon, is a perfect host for this podcast. Her episodes are neither too long nor too short. Most of her episodes range between 12 to 20 minutes, or at the most, her episodes extend up to 30 minutes. Thanks to this assignment that I got introduced to something as great as podcast. It was my luck that I got to hear Grammar Girl for the first time and eventually fell in love with this show. It's fun, informative, entertaining, to the point, and whatnot. It's great to learn that I got to learn various topics of English language. Improved our. It is great for improving our accents, pronunciation, and listeners get to learn new phrases and vocabulary by listening to such podcasts. In episode 819, Mignon gives tips and tells tricks to help her listeners on how to write faster. Let me tell you the best thing about the speaker. She is super friendly and sounds very enthusiastic and fun. There's always something to learn from her explanations and stories, as they are technical, practical, and whimsical. Now there is an episode named How to Write Faster. In this episode, she states facts in this and motivates writers to write without feeling pressurized. She shares 12 tips that might be helpful to the listeners, and even I got intrigued by these points. I guess she is gifted with a convincing tone, as I immediately got up to write something, and I eventually got up and finished one assignment of mine. So let's see what her 12 tips are that help us write faster. The very first point is write at the right time. Make a basic outline first, leave the editing for later, fix your writing targets, minimize disturbances to your routine, write like a child again, try writing sprints, find a friend who'll hold you accountable, use voice typing technology, let go of linearity, take care of yourself, and work on something else. Now, these points might sound quite vague to you, but I'd suggest you to go and listen to episode 819 from Mignon's Grammar Girl show. You'll surely be motivated to get up and complete an assignment of yours just like I did. She can convince and motivate her listeners to do something. Her episode literally got me on my feet, as I told you before. Now, there's an other episode in which she discusses about the concept of borrow or lend. Sometimes people run afoul of standard grammar if they use the word borrow when they should have used lend, or say lend when they should have said borrow. The confusion is understandable since borrowing and lending are both actions related to one transaction, and in some dialects, people do say such things. But here is a clear concept that she teaches her listeners. The person giving an item is doing the lending, and the person who's receiving it is doing the borrowing. For example, if you want to temporarily give your book to someone else, it's correct to say, "Would you like to borrow my book?" Or you can say, "Would you like me to lend my book to you?" Here is something that Mingnan tells her listeners about this concept.
Foul of standard grammar if they use the word borrow when they should have used lend, or say lend when they should have said borrow. The confusion is understandable since borrowing and lending are both actions related to one transaction. And in some dialects, people do say things such as, "Can you borrow me some money?" or "Can I lend your pen?" But in standard English, those two actions are different, and the words borrow and lend aren't interchangeable because they involve different actions and mean different things. Let's look at two examples from literature. British author Mary Norton wrote a series of children's fantasy books about tiny people.
Okay, so I'll give you another example of this concept. If you want to borrow a book from someone else, it is correct to say, "May I borrow that book?" or "Will you lend me that book?" And a person either lends or borrows from someone else. Also, she has an extra segment at the end of every episode where she answers her listeners' questions. Also, listeners can connect to her via email too. Another thing that I actually enjoyed about her show was that she has diverse topics for her episodes. The titles for every podcast are quite unique and intriguing. They actually make you wonder what is the host saying in this one. Let me listen to it. Hence, they are quite attention grabbing, and they indeed grabbed my attention as I went on and on by as I went on and on to listen one episode after another. Now, the next show that I chose was Go Natural English. Now, as we can see on the logo says Go Natural English to express and impress. Now, it obviously means that it is for regular English learners who want to speak English naturally and with fluency. This podcast show is specifically for English learners who are mainly intermediate learners, and every topic that I found in this podcast show was educational and informational. It is for all types of learners who are eager to learn and speak English just like native speakers. But mind you, that you should be an intermediate English learner or speaker when you land on this show. Because if you are a rookie or a beginner, you might find it difficult to understand what the host is saying. Now, there is an episode where the host explains how to make people think uh, that you are fluent in English, even if you're not. It is for speakers who are intermediate English speakers and want more fluency in their speech. It is not your grammar that makes you a good speaker, but your confidence and intonation. This is what the host says, and I, at some point, agree to her because a person should be confident enough while speaking so that the other person uh, may get an idea that he can handle the work or he is a good speaker. Let's see what the host has to say about this.
One word English, then perfect grammar. grammar, a huge vocabulary, and long sentences. So many of you ask me, Gabby, how can I make longer sentences? Gabby, how can I memorize more vocabulary? Teacher, how can I improve my grammar? And look, all of these things are important, but they are not the top priority, I would say. So many of us are distracted by these topics when we really need to be looking over here at what is even more important. Did you know that grammar, pronunciation, vocabulary, these are really only roughly 40% of English language learning and communication? If you want to be an effective, good English speaker, then you need to consider the other 60% of what makes up our communication. Things that are not related to perfect grammar or native English speaker-like pronunciation. Again, those things are nice to have, but they're not the only consideration. Let me tell you how to improve your English without grammar, without perfect pronunciation, without the biggest vocabulary in the world. English speaking fluency, English language learning is 60% made up of the way you communicate, the way you express yourself, the way that you stress words when you speak, your tone of voice and your intonation, which by the way are different, but that's a whole nother lesson. It's about your confidence in the way you communicate with others, your gestures, your facial expression, your smile. These are all ways that we communicate that are very important, even more important than perfect grammar.
Okay, so now you've heard the host. According to her, even if you smile while speaking, you'll turn out to be a good listener speaker. You must know how to carry yourself while speaking English, such as your stress on words, your gestures, and opening of mouth, etc. There is no need to memorize your textbooks for improving your fluency. You need to be a better judge of yourself. Remember that no one else is judging you. It is you who carry yourself and you have to present yourself in a presentable or better way. You must sound happy and joyful for others to know that you're actually enjoying speaking English. That is how you can look out or turn out to be an fluent English speaker even if you're not. In another episode, the host talks about top phrasal verbs for advanced English fluency. Now, if you use phrasal verbs in your language, in your daily speech, the listeners or the people you're talking to will eventually get an idea that you're a fluent English speaker, because beginners do not use advanced phrasal verbs in their language. The host first clears the topic or the concept of phrasal verbs for the listeners. She teaches phrasal verbs with the word of. Now, first she talks what is a phrasal verb. A phrase is such as take off or look down on, that combines a verb with a preposition or adverb or both, and that functions as a verb whose meaning is different from the combined meanings of the individual words. Using phrasal verbs while speaking also makes you look like an advanced English speaker. According to her, phrasal verbs are those that change meaning according to the context. She shares a list of phrasal verbs by using them in relevant sentences. Let's see what that list is. Take off. Take off means do well. For instance, business has really taken off. Call off means to cancel. The proposed merger has been called off. Paid off. It means settle your debt. She saved money every month and finally managed to pay off her student loan. Laugh it off, to pretend that something is less serious than it is. Pair off or pair up, to join together temporarily with another person in order to do something. Now, went off, to enter recklessly on a course. See off, it means to accompany a person who is leaving to their point of departure. Paid off, to give all due wages to specially. Okay, now the last show that I chose was speakenglishpodcast.com. Speakenglish.podcast.com is a podcast show in which the it is for all the regular English learners. It is a perfect learning channel as the host not only teaches language to not only teaches language but new vocabulary to the listeners. She also teaches rules for improving English language. One of her episodes is about the pronunciation of difficult words. I found that episode quite. I found that episode to be a quite efficient way of improving listeners' fluency in English language. In this episode, she teaches to pronounce the word rural, as it can be difficult for even native speakers when spoken with the next word starting with R2. The host gives us an example by using the word in a sentence. I would prefer to leave the city for a rural home. Now, I can pronounce this word well, rural, but beginners who are new to English language, for instance Korean or Japanese, might have difficulty in pronouncing the word rural. So, the host keeps on repeating this word again and again till the listener gets a good idea of its pronunciation. Another word that she explains is phenomenon. She repeatedly calls out this word as well and helps us pronounce it better. She gives us an example of this word in a sentence that says, gravity is a natural phenomenon. In another episode, she talks about time prepositions, which is quite a challenging topic for even intermediate English learners. In this episode, she first gives a general overview of preposition and then begins explaining. We use on before the days of the week. Let's listen to the host explaining this.
Let's start learning some time prepositions in English. We use on before the days of the week. Examples. I went to the doctor on Monday. Don't call me on Sundays because I'm resting. I'd like to buy you lunch on Friday.
Now, this topic, time preposition, is a major topic in English language or English grammar. Some of the teachers and major English learners get confused in it too. The host, Georgiana, first introduces us to these prepositions and then leads us forward with this concept. According to her, the prepositions should never be memorized. To some extent, I agree to this point as well, because English grammar can never be learned by memorizing. You can ace your grammar only when you repeatedly listen and practice speaking it. She gives a number of examples of time prepositions, such as when and where to use on, just like we've listened to the host, in, at, since, for, before, and after, and she also gives us sentences as an example. She uses easy examples that can be understood even by beginner learners. So, this episode was quite helpful, as I am also one of those who gets confused in using while, since, or for in a sentence. Let's see what other examples are. The host says that we use in before months, sessions, time of the day, year, seasons, or after a certain period. For instance, I like running in the morning. We visited Mexico in 2010. We use at for night, for the weekend, and at a certain time. We sometimes finish work at night. I visit my family at Christmas. We use since with days or dates. And we use the preposition for to indicate the length of time. Let's listen to the host again as she explains since and for.
Since. We use since with days or dates. Examples. I haven't seen Tom since yesterday. She hasn't eaten since breakfast. Since the party, he hasn't spoken to me at all. Next preposition. For. We use the preposition for to indicate the length of time. Let's hear some examples. I haven't seen him for 2 years. She had been taking care of her mother for a year. I've waited for the bus for 2 hours.
Okay, so now we move forward to another example where she explains ago. It is a preposition that determines a specific time in the past. For example, winter seems a very long time ago. Now, another episode that caught my attention on this show was different ways to greet someone in English. This episode is quite relevant to our current situation because COVID 19 has left us skeptical. We can still not risk our health by getting in physical contact with others. The host explains the actions of saying hello in English by describing it. It helps the listeners in understanding the new words, phrases, and the action. She deeply explains elbow bump, saying hello with high feet, high five from a distance, and military style salute. Although this topic is not quite related to English grammar, but explaining this topic helps listeners in learning new grammar rules and vocabulary. Any topic, when spoken in English, helps us in learning something new. Let's listen to the host explaining these actions. Now, I've speeded up this audio for you all to listen to it, but you can listen to it better on the website. Thank you.
Elbow bump. The idea is to use your elbow to touch the other person's elbow. The elbow is the joint we have in the middle of each arm. I consider this kind of greeting a bit absurd, since you end up making physical contact in another way, but you avoid contact with your hands. However, it's easy to touch your elbows with your hands. For example, you might touch your elbows when crossing your arms. So it's better not to have any contact at all. Number 2, saying hello with your feet. Yes, I've seen people use their feet to say hello, and it looks strange. But the first time I saw it, I thought it was hilarious. The idea is to make each other's feet collide. I guess it's safer than the elbow bump, but it requires some skill to stay balanced. For a couple of seconds, you need to stand on one foot. So perhaps for older people, it's not the best idea. Number 3, high five from a distance. See, this seems more logical to me. You raise your right hand and pretend you are high-fiving. There is no contact whatsoever. However, imagine you will greet someone and you high-five in the air, but the other person doesn't and stares at what you're doing. It's a bit embarrassing. Number 4, military-style salute. As you can imagine, it is the typical salute that militaries give, although we do it in a more relaxed and less abrupt way. When I greet someone on the street, I raise my hand and say hello. I do it quickly, and it's more natural that way. I don't like the elbow or foot greeting. Before I move on to the
Okay, so this audio that you have heard is not only uh, telling us about the grammar or new phrases or vocabulary, it is also enhancing our power of imagination. As I listened through it, I was imagining the action itself. So I guess it was quite a good and creative topic for the listeners. So that's all for my presentation today. I hope you enjoyed each podcast show, and I hope that you'll go and listen to these by yourselves too. Thank you.